Secretary Clinton, I know your time is very limited. I'll just ask you one last quick question. It's kind of a thought experiment. Let's say it all does go pear-shaped. Let's say it is November 18th, 2016, and for whatever reason, it's President-elect Donald Trump. In that circumstance, is Hillary Clinton moving to Canada?
Hillary Clinton refuses to accept the fact that she lost the election to President Trump. In an interview with NPR, Clinton said that she won't rule out contesting the election and the election results if there's actual proof of so-called Russia election interference. Now, this is the exact opposite of what Clinton tweeted about Donald Trump last October. Remember, she tweeted this, quote, "Donald Trump refused to say that he'd respect the results of the election. That's a direct threat to our democracy." Here now.
Hillary Clinton apparently still not over her 2016 defeat to President Trump. She's now claiming the election was stolen from her. Watch this.
I think it's also critical to understand that, as I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you. And you can have the election stolen from you. Stolen from you. Stolen from you.
So I want to get back to the question, as would you completely rule out questioning the legitimacy of this election if we learn that the Russian interference in the election is even deeper than we know now?
No, I would not. I would say...
You're not going to rule it out?
No, I would...
I do think that he knows that he's an illegitimate president.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president who got illegitimate foreign help.
He knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did.
You can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
I know that he knows that this wasn't on the level.
Why do you think the president is going to such great lengths to essentially prove that he beat you?
Because he knows he didn't. He knows he's an illegitimate president.
I do think that he knows that he's an illegitimate president.
It is certainly an oddity of our democracy that in almost every race we count the ballots and give the victory to the person who has the most votes, except for the presidency, where often, as we see this year, as we saw in 2000, as we've seen in earlier races, the person with the most votes sometimes does not become president. In this case, by all accounts thus far, some counting still going on, Hillary Clinton.
The Clinton campaign brought multiple post-election court cases, demanded recounts, and ridiculously declared the election stolen by Russia. Many Democrats even attempted to persuade the Electoral College delegates to overturn the 2016 results. House Manager Raskin objected to the certification of President Trump's victory 4 years ago, along with many of his colleagues. You'll remember it was Joe Biden who had to gavel them down.
I have an objection because 10 of the 29 electoral votes cast by Florida were cast by electors not lawfully certified.
I object to the votes from the state of Wisconsin, which should not be legally certified.
No debate.
Mr. President, I object to the certificate from the state of Georgia on the grounds that the electoral votes were not...
Debate. There's no debate.
And I object to the certificate from the state of North Carolina.
I object to the 15 votes from the state of North Carolina. I object.
I object to the certificate from the state of Alabama. The electors were not lawfully certified.
Is it signed by a senator?
Not as of yet, Mr. President.
In that case, the objection cannot be entertained. The objection cannot be entertained. Debate is not in order.
Even with the
there is no debate in order. Is it signed by a senator? There is no debate. There is no debate in the joint session. There is no debate. There is no debate. There is no debate. Please come to order. The objection cannot be received. Section 18, Title 3 of the United States Code prohibits debate in the joint session.
I do not wish to debate. I wish to ask, is there one United States senator who will join me in this letter
There
of
is no
objection?
debate. There is no debate. The gentlewoman will suspend.
And then there were the Russians, and the Russians.
But the larger point that I want to emphasize here is that there is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections, in part because they're so decentralized and the numbers of votes involved. There's no evidence that that has happened in the past or that there are instances in which that will happen this time.
There are some tax experts in Silicon Valley with whom I have met who say that, maybe what they'll do this next time is to really disrupt the actual election, shut down the servers that you send results to, interfere with the operation of voting machines, because still too many of them are linked to the internet. So we are still very vulnerable.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections.
Maybe what they'll do this next time is to really disrupt the actual election, shut down the servers that you send results to, interfere with the operation of voting machines, because still too many of them are linked to the internet.
I don't even really know where to start on answering this question. Of course the elections will not be rigged. What does that mean? The federal government doesn't run the election process. States and cities and communities all across the country, they're the ones who set up the voting systems and the voting booths, and that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense, and I don't think anybody would take that seriously.
And one of the hallmarks of a real democracy is the peaceful transfer of power. Was I happy when I beat Donald Trump by nearly 3 million votes but lost the Electoral College? No, I was not happy.
And there's no doubt that the Russians did interfere in the election. And I think the interference, although not yet quantified, if fully investigated, would show that Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered on his behalf.
I know of no evidence that through cyber intrusions, votes were altered or suppressed in some way.
Everything from sexism and misogyny and race and the Russians and, this voter suppression. I mean, there's a lot there that...
Hillary Clinton has been hugely critical of President Donald Trump in interviews over the last week surrounding the release of her 2016 memoir, What Happened. She suggested he is a misogynist. She said repeatedly that she fears for the country with Trump in charge. On Monday, in an interview with NPR's Terry Gross, Clinton raised that critique up a notch. She not only questioned the legitimacy of Trump's presidency, but she refused to rule out the possibility of contesting the results. That is, if Russian collusion is proven by special counsel Bob Mueller.
Special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation has concluded that President Donald Trump's campaign did not work with Russia to send him to the White House in 2016.
And then there were the Russians.
Democrats and Republicans are waking up to a brand new political reality after Robert Mueller and his team spent nearly 2 years digging through the evidence, issuing more than 2,800 subpoenas, executing nearly 500 search warrants, and interviewing approximately 500 witnesses. The results are in. And take a look at the headlines from the Washington Post to the New York Post. They're what the president wanted.
And then there were the Russians.
As for Mueller's central assignment, the letter says the special counsel did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with the Russians to interfere in the election. No involvement, Mueller concluded, with the Russian-led hacking into Democratic computers or the phony social media accounts set up by Russian intelligence to spread disinformation.
And then there were the Russians.
The special counsel concluded the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities.
Does it look like to you intentional collusion, or does it look like something more innocent?
I'm not prepared to say it was intentional collusion. I've not seen any evidence of that. People whose judgment I trust, Jim Clapper, John Brennan, although they've left government, said by the time they left, there was no evidence of collusion.
As I told you yesterday, the explosive Durham report has exposed not just the lies around the Russian collusion hoax, But it also showed just how compromised the FBI and Justice Department have become and why trust in those institutions has plummeted. Special Counsel John Durham's 316-page report is devastating for those who push the Russian collusion lie for 4 years. The Democrats and the media's complicity in this saga have been, well demonstrated, but this report found the FBI should never have launched its investigation and that it had no real evidence before it launched its probe, and it knew that. As James Bovard wrote in the New York Post, Durham exposed how the FBI and Justice Department plotted to rig the 2016 presidential election. This is serious stuff. This is as serious as it gets.
Well, Jake, the bottom line finding from John Durham's 4-year investigation is that the FBI moved very quickly to investigate these allegations of connections, of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, and that they did so by ignoring a lot of evidence that would have led them to drop that altogether. He's saying that they may have had reason to open a preliminary investigation, an assessment. Perhaps these are very, very low-level investigations. But certainly what he finds is that there wasn't enough there to support the FBI's decision to open a full-blown investigation of this of the Trump-Russia ties back in 2016.
And you can have the election stolen from you, and stolen from you, and stolen from you.